Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Lunch and Learn webinar from HotDocs. Today we have Tony Biddulph, who will be guiding us through his presentation in a few moments' time. He is on this call with me. Just by way of introduction, my name's Graham Penman. I'm the technical manager at HotDocs, and it's a pleasure to have you on this webinar today. This is hopefully going to be a way for you to learn a little bit more about HotDocs, but really to get the experience from Tony and his ventures into document automation and the experience that he has. So we hope that you will learn a lot from it. Just a little bit of housekeeping as we begin. This is hopefully going to be a little bit more interactive. Hopefully you can see on your panel on the GoToMeeting that you have an ability to be able to ask some questions. If you have any questions at any point for either myself or for Tony, please type them in the questions and we'll do a Q&A at the very end. We don't want to keep you for too long on this webinar, so I'm going to jump straight into it. And what I'd like to do is very briefly just give you a quick overview of what HotDocs does, and then I'm going to pass the floor on to the rest of this webinar to Tony. So what do we do? What is our technology all about? How do we help our customers and people looking at document automation? Well, we take the documents that you produce on a regular basis in the format that they're in, typically Word or PDF, and we give non-technical business users the tools to be able to transform them into HotDocs templates. And that's the process of finding all the changeable pieces of information and the business rules, and then inserting HotDocs instructions in their place. And during that process, we call that template authoring, content authoring. And during that process, HotDocs builds something called the HotDocs interview. And the HotDocs interview really takes you from a template into phase 2, which is consuming a template, where someone takes a template and produces a document from it. And HotDocs builds a dynamic question and answer session, something called the HotDocs interview, which captures all the information you need to produce a document. And as you answer questions, questions appear and disappear depending on how you've answered them. And then once we've captured all that information, either from a user or from a system, we then push it into our intelligent document assembly engine, and out pops a document or a suite of documents based on the templates that you've selected, the business rules, and the data you passed us. And we also save that data for reuse across other documents. So that's a very high level. We're all about document automation. We're all about the assembly of simple or complex documentation to the required business rules using the data that you have. So that's just addressing the very high level requirements. And we have lots of different products that allow you to do that, ranging from desktop all the way to enterprise server to cloud solutions, and an array of services around integrating them with your core systems. But I want to keep it at that very high level and hand you over now to Tony, who is going to take you through his experience of document automation through the various organizations that he has worked with. Again, just as a reminder, any questions that you have, please enter them into the chat window, and then we will address them at the very end. So I'm going to introduce you to Tony, and he will take you on from here.
Hi everyone, thanks for the introduction. So yes, but my name's Tony Biddulph, and if I just give you a bit of background on where I've come from and how I've got involved with document automation. So I've been working with automation for 20 years plus. I started my career off in Royal Bank of Scotland, so in one of the global banks, and actually went into a documentation department in the early 90s. And at that stage, RBS was quite ahead of the game, and we'd already started to look at automation at that stage. It wasn't until the late 90s that I actually got involved in that document automation, and I'd gone from being a documenter through to actually coding the templates and doing the document automation as such. And I was involved in a project of transferring from an old system, so the likes of Workform, over to HotDocs. So after my RBS time, so in 2011, I left the bank. I set up on my own as a document automation specialist, so an independent. Since then, I've worked for a number of other global banks, as well as a number of legal firms within the city. So I've kind of got a range of skill sets. I've also used lots of different document automation tools, so the likes of Xari, Contract Express, Workform, Ghostfail and HotDocs. So I've not kind of just stuck with the one actual product. I've kind of got experience of all of them. But what I really wanted to get over today was to kind of go through and tell you about the differences and the you know, some of the things that you come across when you're looking at document automation. So as I say, I've worked in you know, both banks and in law firms, and the way they approach document automation is in two different ways. That's kind of the way it's been that I've seen it. So with banks, there's a drive for efficiency, but as well as that, there is a drive for control. Because it's such a heavily regulated area, you know, the fact that documents can be controlled by using a simple tool like HotDocs, you know, just adds additional benefit there. So there's a great drive for that. Where in law firms, the tool is used in a lot of cases as a first draft production tool. So it kind of gives the users a base document, and that can vary from user to user. So some lawyers will like the fact that they can go into a HotDocs or an equivalent and be able to get out an output which is the precedent. So it would have all the options in with, you know, all in square brackets so that they can take out and manually work on that document. Others will go to the other extreme where they will kind of answer all the questions within the HotDocs interview or document automation interview and get an accurate document out that needs no manual amendment. But the beauty of HotDocs and how I found it over the time, and that's why I consider it to be the better product, is that you can change that depending on the user. So you know, a user can go in and decide to answer, you know, 5 questions or 2 questions or 90% of the questions, and depending on how much they progress through, that will give them, you know, that amount of efficiency saves. So that's kind of the two different drivers. So, you know, the efficiency is mainly in the banks and the risk control, and in the law firms, yes, there is an efficiency, but it is just a tool that will help the users, you know, produce that document. It can be used to kind of, you know, the customers that like loss leading customers, so where you've got to try and, you know, you can only charge so much for that customer. You've got to make the whole process more efficient, and document automation helps on that front. So if I just go some of the benefits that you see from document automation. So obviously I've just gone over the cost, the efficiency, the cost reduction kind of aspect, and the fact that, you know, if you are spending less time producing documents, you're going to spend less cost actually on that process. But one thing that's quite often forgotten about is a template rationalization side. So if I give an example, I've just done some work for the MENA region, so the Middle East region. So there were 7 countries involved, and each one of those 7 countries had 7 different templates, whether it be for a new facility, an amendment, a renewal, a rundown. So 7 countries, 7 templates. So all in all, there were 49 templates. Well, because they were so similar, and the only thing that differed was governing law or a couple of minor tweaks on products, etc., we were able to put that into a single a single HotDocs template. So it was a simple case of asking a question, which country are you processing for, and it would give that right output. So from an efficiency point of view, there isn't just the document production, but there's the document template maintenance side of it. So, you know, if you only have to update one template, obviously it's going to save you a lot of time. And then you've got the customer experience and standardization. So your customer experience is definitely improved. And if I just go back to that example about the template rationalization, as we went through that, obviously we standardized. So previously you had 7 countries all with a bit different templates that had kind of morphed over the years into, you know, their kind of look and feel. what we did was we were going to that single template, so we standardized that. But that meant, from a customer experience, when you've got your multinationals that are dealing with 7 different countries for one big transaction, the actual documents they were getting through actually had the same look and feel. They were able to, when it came to negotiating those documents, it wasn't a case of starting afresh each time. They could go, with the single document to the single lawyers, get the feedback and then do the negotiations. So it was definitely an improvement for that customer experience. Then we go on to the risk mitigation side, so the compliance side. So document automation, so the likes of HotDocs, it ensures the documents are in accordance with the internal governance of the organization and also the external regulations. That complexity and control can be built into the HotDocs interview. And obviously that helps to reduce the risk, so the conduct, the legal, the operational, the reputational risk are all reduced because the documents that you get out are accurate. And if I go on to the document quality, your accuracy of documents is increased because the chance of having manual errors, if you've got a 90-page document that you've got to make sure the plurals are all the same, or make sure that you've taken any reference to sublimits or anything like that out, that can lead to inaccuracies. But if that's automated, that whole accuracy piece is so much more. And another benefit of HotDocs is Graham talked earlier about that HotDocs kind of gathers an interview, so it presents the user with an interview so it can gather the information. But those interviews are intelligent, so they can be dynamically displayed to the users, so that the users are only asked the relevant questions to guide them through to getting that end document. And that will just save time, but it also it does give that user that confidence that actually I've answered all the things that I need to do. I've provided enough information. If they're missing something, the interview will prompt them. It will say, actually, I need this information, otherwise I cannot produce a document. And as well as that, you can add, you can have HotDocs producing complex calculations in the background. So if you are entering numeric fields in there, you can use those within calculations, so working out repayment schedules, working out APR, anything like that can be done within that HotDocs interview. And the final item I've got on there regarding data quality is the golden source of data. So I'll go on to this on one of the next slides, but when it comes to integrating HotDocs with other core systems that you may have, what that means is that you can feed the data from that golden source into the HotDocs interview, therefore making sure that it's accurate. There's no chance of typing the name in incorrectly because it's been entered correctly at that golden source. But the other beauty of it is, if you are using those data feeds in, if you find that you've got something wrong when you get to that interview stage within HotDocs, it's not a case, if you were doing a manual template, you just correct it and that would be it. You are forcing the users to go back to that golden source of data, correcting it, and then relaunching the answers to make sure that you've got that accurate data. And that's really it from what I'm going to say on the benefit side of it. But what I'm going to do now is move on to how HotDocs can be integrated into systems. And again, this will just help when it comes to efficiency, control, etc. And how I'm going to display this is just like a case study of how I've seen HotDocs being integrated with a financial system. So this is like an end-to-end lending proposition, and how that kind of progresses through an organization. So if I just go through the stages, you've got the customer comes in and they want a facility, they want a loan, they apply for that loan. That loan is then it goes to a sanctioning system, and an agreement made for that lending proposition. The documentation then needs to produce, and that's the bit that we'll mainly concentrate on. And then obviously once the documentation's been done, the loan can be drawn down, the loan will be monitored, and then you've got your problem management if that ever does happen. But if I just actually look at the lending document side, so when you get to that stage, you say, right, okay, I need a document. I need the lending document, either a loan document or an overdraft. So I'll launch HotDocs. So what HotDocs can do then, it can pull from that credit system. So the system that's kind of gone through the sanctioning process, the one that will have put all the conditions against the actual proposition, the security that's required, you know, any financial covenants, etc. It can pull all that information from that system and populate the interview. So you know, there's no chance that you will get the limit wrong, so the facility amount wrong, because that's coming through from what was actually agreed at that sanction level. You won't be able to miss conditions, covenants, because again, it will be pulled from that credit system. You can also pull from other systems within the organization. So if there's a CRM system, that core customer data, that can be pulled through as well. So if it's not something that would sit within the credit system, pull it from a system that is available. Again, we're aiming to get, if you are entering a piece of data once in the organization, make sure it's entered once and then feed it into the other systems, and that again will just increase accuracy and your data quality. So there would in this case there'd probably be a feed from the CRM into the credit system, but I've not got that on this diagram because I was concentrating on the lending documentation. So all that information is pulled through from the credit systems. HotDocs then can ask for additional information. So if there's stuff that's required for the documentation purposes, that can be obtained. So you go to the relationship manager, pull that information in to the HotDocs system. Now the system that I'm going to talk about now could then make a decision whether it would consider whether that that document, that lending proposition could be classed as a standard document. And if it was, then it could send that back to the RM so that they could display at the pointer source. They would be able to just print out and get the customer to sign it. So that means that your turnaround time for standard documentation goes from maybe 2-3 days from going into a credit, into a documentation department to minutes, because the RM can pull the information from the credit system, add any extra, and get the document on the screen there. So that's if it's standard. If it's non-standard, and again, that decision, the parameters that define what's non-standard and standard can all be within that HotDocs interview. If it's non-standard, it can say, right, well, I'll need additional information, or I'll need a second pair of eyes. So it can send it into a documentation team, where that documentation team can add value. Check that the information is accurate, just make sure that everything is perfect. Once they've agreed that, and again, they're not having to recapture the data, re-enter the data, because it can pull that data from the HotDocs interview into their system and vice versa. But once they've got that, they can then send that out to the relationship manager, and whether that's through a workflow tool or through email, that can all be again integrated into the HotDocs system. So the document's there, it's ready to go out to the customer. Goes to the customer signs it. Again, that could just be a paper-based document going out to the customer, but HotDocs can integrate with DocuSign and other electronic signature software applications, and so that could be an electronic storage of an electronic signature of the customer. But then the document comes in, it's all signed, and it's ready for storage. So one of the big pushes at the moment regarding financial institutions anyway is the electronic storage of signed documentation. So that comes in, it can then be put into a document management system. So the data can be scanned, or the document can be scanned in or electronically passed into that document management system. But then you've got the added complication of how do I get the information about that actual transaction? Do I have to scan in that document? Do I have to kind of OCR it and try and pull that information out? That isn't necessarily a requirement, because all that data that was captured to populate that document is contained within the HotDocs database. So you can pull that metadata across therefore indexing that document that you've brought into the document management system, making it so that it's searchable, making it so you can get the MI out of it. So it's as you can see from this, the actual HotDocs is a center point, and everything can feed into it, and HotDocs can integrate into all these different aspects of it. So it's a very, very useful tool. So if I just go over some of the lessons that I've learned over the years, so when it comes to doing large documentation projects, and whether it be in the global financial institutions or in law firms, one of the key things that I've learned when I'm trying to look at document automation is, first of all, establish what I'm trying to automate. So in a lot of places you will find, especially if you're trying to replace a completely manual process, there will be two different understanding of what you're trying to automate. There will be the template owner, so the legal, who will this is what the document is supposed to cover and this is what we're supposed to automate. And then there'll be the business side, or the people that have been manually producing the documents in the past, and they'll have a completely different understanding of what that document should be used for, because there's no control. And so you might find, oh, well, it was used for X, Y, and Z, but actually it was only written to cover X, and the Y and Z are just kind of nice Spanish customs that have come in over the years. So as I say, it's important to establish what you're trying to automate, and as I say, from that aspect, you ensure that you have the input of the users as well as the document owners. And what that does then, it kind of, you're not going to deliver something on day one that only covers 20% of the transactions. You're aiming to deliver something that is both accurate from the legal side, but also from the user side. So it's a fit for purpose template, and that obviously will help with the user adoption. User adoption is always going to be hard. People don't like change. If there's somebody that's been documenting for 20 years, they don't like somebody to come along and say, here's, you can answer a few questions and you can do what you were doing in 4 hours and we can do it in 2 minutes. So you've got to try and bring people along on that journey with you, so to get them to adopt that new process. One of the ways you can do that is remove the old process. Make sure that there's no manual way of producing documents. As you saw in that integration screen before, if you launch your document production system from within your credit system or within your workflow system, that can stop that the users being able to go into the top drawer and pull out last year's copy or one that's stored in their local drive, because there is that audit trail. The next is the benefits realization side. So yes, we've got these efficiencies. How do we realize that? Yes, there's the way of hard headcount. So once we've saved for 5 FTE, let's get rid of 5 FTE. But there's different ways of approaching that. It's not necessarily a case of staff reduction. You can actually get the staff being utilized for more added value tasks. So rather than the processing side where they weren't adding value, you can actually say, right, okay, I've got these 5 people now, they've got documentation experience. Well, rather than me outsourcing that document, those the complex documents, are there any of those that can be brought in now because we've got capacity? And again, if you do that, that helps with that user adoption, because people kind of think, oh well, we can bring that on. I want this to be easier for me. So how can I guide the HotDocs interviews to kind of give me those products? Rather than me go and ask somebody for the answer. Well, if that answer was available within the interview, that would kind of improve things. And I'll move on then to the final point, which is continuous improvement. So we've said that we can put in these templates. The templates will have changes made to them from a legislative point of view, from a policy point of view. But if you open up those communication channels between the actual users and the developers and the template owners, you're gonna, the more that the users use that product, they'll kind of say, well, actually, it would help if I kind of had this question defaulted, or if I reworded that question, it would make my life a lot easier. And so if you open up those communication channels between the different areas, you will get that continuous improvement to the templates as a default, and it empowers the users. It gives them the confidence that actually, I like using this product. And what I found is once you'll get people to a certain stage, and then they're knocking at your door saying, how quickly can you get me this document on? Or, we're going to be getting this new document in 2 weeks. I don't want a manual process. Can you automate it for me? And it just improves and improves and improves. And that's basically my presentation. So as I say, I've kind of got a raft of experience in a lot of different organizations, lots of different document automation products. I'm very passionate about it, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have now. And I'll hand over to
Excellent.
Graham.
All right, thanks for that, Tony. I'm just pulling up the question window just now. There's been a couple of questions that have come in just now. So, first question is, if you're staring down the barrel of, I'm paraphrasing this, isn't the full question, but if you've got a whole lot of documentation that you want to automate, how do you select the right candidate for automation? So, if you're just starting off a project in document automation and someone said we need to get it in, where do you start?
Right. So from that side of it, so there's a lot of analysis that needs to be done. So you've got two different kind of aspects. You've got how often is that document used? How much efficiency will you gain if you automate it, and how long will it take you to automate? So we tend to go down that 80-20 rule, so that there will be 80% of the documents that are standard, and kind of that's where you would concentrate on. So you'd go for your high volume transaction, your standard transactions, and you'd automate that. And I would always say, I would tend to push people to kind of make a jump and get one of the high volume transactions, because as soon as you get that on the system, people can then really see the true benefits. If you try and automate something that's actually it's only produced 2 or 3 times a year, you don't get that impact straight away. Whereas if you kind of say, actually, I'm putting this on, there's 200 of these done a week, and each one of them saving us half an hour, then you've got so much time. So I would push people to go for the high volume, but obviously the standard document. So if you've got heavily negotiated documents, there isn't as as great a benefit from an automation side.
Great, thanks for that. And I know that there's a kind of two-part question coming here. So in terms of integration with document management systems, you speak of being able to pull in metadata from the contract production stage. So yes, so there's the ability within HotDocs that we can pull data from almost any other line of business system. So if you have metadata you need to profile documents into a document management system, we can pull that in and use as the document profile for when we save it after the assembly process. And we can also push and pull from that data source. And then, is there any recommended solution for those contracts that have been negotiated away from the original position as per documentation is the final position that's relevant? So, in terms of that negotiation, where does we've discussed this quite a lot. Where does HotDocs sit in that kind of negotiation? There's a negotiation on the data that's used to produce the documents, and you can handle that within the HotDocs interview process, and you negotiate on that data. But what about the kind of cylindrical negotiation portion? I know we talked about this the other week there.
So, I mean, yeah, so HotDocs is a first draft automation tool, and there are a lot of benefits there. When it comes to the negotiation, there's 2 ways that you can look at this. So you can build added functionality within the standard document. So if you have a regularly negotiated clause, and it's regularly negotiated, and there are alternatives that are acceptable, you can build that into the HotDocs interview. So you can say, first draft, this is what our preferred kind of stance. second draft, actually, we'll relaunch the answer sets and we're happy to accept this version, and this version. So that's a way that you can improve and almost increase the standardization of the templates. But then you talk about the other side of it. So once it's gone out of HotDocs, how do you do that? Well, most organizations will have a document management system. HotDocs can pump out that push out that first document, that first draft into the document management system. It can profile it at that stage. If there are negotiations, you would use the version control within the document management system itself. When it comes to actually profiling documents, there's two ways you can do it. You could actually relaunch the answer set from the original HotDocs, for the document production, and if there have been amendments, any kind of negotiations, update those answers so that metadata would be pushed through. So the beauty of HotDocs is that the answer file that sits within the system, it can be used across a number of templates. So you're not restricted to kind of say, actually, I produced the loan agreement with that answer set, so that's all I can do. You can actually pull that data and say, well, I'll pull this through a header sheet or a profiling document and pull the information through from that original request, and then give the users the ability to amend certain bits, make sure that all the parts are locked down. So it's it's a very flexible product in that way.
Perfect. Thanks, Tony. Well, I think we've run out of time. We're just running 2 minutes over. I don't want to keep you all back for much longer, but I just want to say thank you very much for joining us on this webinar. I hope that has been helpful for you. Any other questions that you may have, you can get in contact with us at HotDocs at marketing@hotdocs.co.uk or info@hotdocs.co.uk, and we'd be very happy to speak to you on that. So finally, thank you very much, Tony, for your time. Thank you for presenting that to us, and we will be putting the recording of this webinar up on our website so that you can play it back and share it with people who may also be interested in this area as well. So again, thank you very much for your time and hope to speak to you all very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.